If you would have told any of us back in 1981, 82 that we'd still be doing this and talking about it 40 years later, we all would have thought you were crazy.
When you're looking at new talent and what have you, is that sometimes tough for you to go like, you know, Brian, no, I can't only go with, you know, old school heroes. I have to look at what's really new out there.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, luckily for me, I like a lot of different stuff. I like a lot of different styles. And you see that with Metal Blade, you know, over the years, we've had a lot of different acts from, you know, Cannibal Corpse to Mother Feather, which, you know, would never go together. But I like a lot of different stuff. So, and my thing when I'm looking for a new band is something that sounds different, something that doesn't sound like everything else. Because we get a million demos of bands that sound exactly like Black Dahlia Murder. Well, we already have Black Dahlia Murder, so we don't really need another one. Right. I want to find something that's new and different. And, you know, and my sense of what I like about metal, it could be anything. Like I said, it can be a band like your wonderful t-shirt, Visigoth, which is one of my favorite bands at the moment, actually.
Yeah.
And they kind of came out of nowhere, but I thought, wow, this band is really great. We have to do something with them. So yeah, it just, but it's got to be something a little bit different. Like I said, we try not to do too many things in the same genre if possible.
Betrayer, deceiver, my words are a sword of cleansing flame.
Question that I'd love to ask you. With your experience from running a label and working with bands, some from the get-go to stardom. And it actually triggered, the question was triggered when I saw you talk about the Las Vegas Nights team. Because for me as a European living in North America, the concept of big sports teams being created overnight is weird to me. I come from a continent where every town has its soccer team, or football as I would call it, and it's been there for 100 years. And if that team were ever to move to a different town, that would just be the end of the world. It doesn't make any sense. And for me, it kind of feels a little similar to what nowadays seems to be this accepted way to stardom is, oh, if you go on The Voice, if you go on Idol, if you go on whatever's Got Talent, that's the way to become the new superstar. Where in your world, everybody, even the ones that got really big, at some point were driving in a, you know, beat down van from like city to city to, you know, paying their dues. How do you look at that? At that, you know, that concept that we're having more and more of overnight stardom or fame. How do you live with that? Because you must get different mentalities from young bands or questions from young bands that are starting, who grew up in this instant stardom world.
Excuse me. Yeah, you know, it's first of all, I don't mind those shows. I don't watch them, but I don't mind them because, look, anything that's going to make music bigger is going to help all of us, I think. So that's totally fine. And, you know, even though it's mainstream, and I think it goes even beyond those shows. I think just a lot of younger people these days just kind of think that they're going to be big right away. Right. And it wasn't, like you mentioned, it wasn't that way in the 80s and 90s. I mean, you were, you know, driving a station wagon, sleeping on people's floors, you know, paying your dues. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of bands recently that, you know, either we've signed or other people have signed, who have this attitude of like, yeah, I'm going to go out on the road. I need a bus for the first tour. It's like, a bus? Like, no, that's very expensive, and you're not going to get a bus. You're going to drive in a van, and you're going to be very happy about it.
Yeah.
And they kind of get taken aback. But there are all of the, you know, bands who've been around for a long time who are there to kind of explain, you know, how this sort of stuff works. And we've had situations with bands where, you know, maybe things weren't going as well as they expected it to go. And well, I personally know from a couple of the bands that we deal with that were out on big tours, like Warped Tour or something like that, for example. When things weren't going so well, you know, a couple guys from other bands would kind of tell them like, hey, you know, you guys are doing well. Like, for example, you know, one of the bands had a record come out, and the first week wasn't what we all expected. It was a great record, but it just, for whatever reason, that first week didn't do so well. It ended up doing great. But they were on one of those tours, and they were kind of bummed out. And Andy Williams from Every Time I Die, who's a super great guy, went up to them and said, are people coming to your shows? And they're like, yeah. Are they enjoying the show? And they're like, yeah. He said, well, what are you complaining about? I mean, you guys are doing great. Just be, everything's gonna be fine. Just, and gave him a real good pep talk. And that was, certainly great for us because, we were trying to do the same thing, but sometimes it takes people from the outside to explain that. So I think there's a lot of that happens in our world more so than the pop world.
As I take
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.